And then, you're going to work and then you get a flat tire. Like, is that going to just send you into another spiral? Now you're so stressed, you're so anxious. Like that's already a very inconvenient thing, but does inconvenience need to equal anxiety all the time? But it does when you're working from a place of this like hypervigilance. It does feel like the end of the world when you get a flat tire.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions here in Iowa. We're still doing outpatient mental health counseling sessions over telehealth and in any of our 6 Iowa locations.
And I'm Krista Hunt. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services. And that is our program where we go in home and work with children ages 4 through 18 on different behavioral skills or through telehealth anywhere in Iowa as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
All right, so our guest today joins us from Georgia. She is a licensed social worker, licensed to practice in the state of Georgia, Texas, and North Carolina. She also offers services over telehealth, as well as in her geographical location in Georgia. She is a licensed social worker. She's a writer working on a self-help book for women. She's a psychotherapist. She's been in this field for 8 years and specializes in women's mental health and South Asian therapy, which I'm very interested to hear about, working with couples and working with persons with eating disorders. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. We've got Ayushi Acharya with us today. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. So I've got to ask you what South Asian therapy is. I've seen this on your bio and on your site, and I just need to know more.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the demographics I primarily work with is South Asian. So right now I would say my private practice is about 90% South Asian. And I would say primarily we work on like cultural issues, identity issues, a lot of like couples counseling, really, subjects that are or like issues that are really relevant to the South Asian experience. So you're getting a lot of like the family problems, a lot of like the conflicts with that, a lot of just like learning how your childhood is really impacting like you as an adult now. And I would say that it's a group that where like therapy is like really taboo. A lot of folks come to me and they're like, I told my parents I had, anxiety when I was in high school, and they were like, you don't have anxiety. You just need to like eat something, or you just need to like, make good grades. And it was very much so because there's, and I like to tell people like in our language, in a lot of like South Asian languages, like there's really no words for like bipolar disorder or anxiety or depression. There's no like language at all. So, I'm in this like unique space where I have to like create that language too. But yes, it's been quite a journey for that.
So are you originally then from the South Asian area?
Yes. So I was born in Mumbai. I was going to say Bombay, but they don't say that anymore. But Mumbai, India, and but I moved here as a baby. But my parents are both from India, and I have a brother as well, and he was actually 7 when we moved here. So that was quite an experience for him too, because he was, he was doing really well in math, but he was in like ESOL classes for like language. So and my parents didn't really like know anything here. So like really like through childhood, through middle school, like it was this like divide between like my weekends would be filled with like South Asian activities, such as like South Asian dance, and we would go to the temple. But then my week was like completely opposite. I had to, I was in Girl Scouts, and I was, most of my friends were, I grew up in a suburb in Marietta. So, most of my friends were not Indian at all. So is this really like divide between like which culture do I go to?
Wow. So coming from a culture where therapy is so taboo, what led you towards this field and working to help fight some of that stigma?
I think I just saw this big gap in services. And, I worked in the hospital in like pediatrics as well. And I would see some of these issues coming up, and also like with my friends. And I'm like, had we had someone to talk to when we were at these like, really transforming ages in your young adulthood, like in our 20s, or, before we get married, or before, we make these big life decisions, like, could that have just, made us make more healthy choices for ourselves? And I definitely saw a gap in that. And I was like, this is where I want to be. And I found that, a lot of the folks I work with, they like working with someone that kind of just understands like the cultural stuff.
So I saw that you had put that you had a great counseling experience. Was counseling taboo for you as well, since you kind of grew up with that, your family being from there, or were they pretty open to counseling then when you started in the field and when you had a counseling experience?
Yeah, I would say they were confused. My brother became a doctor, and they kind of was like, when I was kind of like, I'm more interested in mental health, they're like, okay, so you'll do psychiatry. And I was like, no, I was like, I think I want to do something else. So it was more just like a confusion, as in like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to really just sit there and talk to people all day? And I'm like, no, there's a lot more to that. So like, it was a lot of education, I would say, more than anything else. And then, I haven't really like specifically like talk to my family about like my own counseling experience, but I've my husband and I did couples counseling before we got married, or like premarital counseling rather, which I thought was really I wanted to experience it, and I had a really good experience with that.
Yeah, a lot of people, premarital counseling is so great in so many ways, but it's so great that it's kind of like a gateway service. It's a service that people can kind of experience counseling in a way that's kind of more culturally understood. And when we say, "Oh, I'm going to premarital counseling so that we can use this church or so we can go to have this venue," people really understand that and support that in a way that isn't always understood in the same way when we say, I'm going to go to individual counseling for my anxiety, or we're going to continue in couples counseling as we are newlyweds, just so that transition goes a little bit more smoothly for us, right? So yeah, that premarital counseling is so important there. And so it's so interesting, language and language around mental health, and these diagnoses that we kind of in North America, there's kind of a phenomenon where those diagnoses, the words, are used in pop culture. So we'll hear people say, "Oh, I'm having an anxiety attack about this test," or "Oh, I'm feeling so depressed." And there's challenges with that kind of using it as slang, but it also demonstrates how integrated those diagnoses, those terms are into our language in North America. So without those words, without that integration into the culture and the language, how do you translate those diagnoses?
Yes, I think I have to get really creative. I think, I worked with children at one point in my career so far. Not saying I wouldn't do it again. I just don't do it right now. But I think it was like explaining to parents what was going on. And, the parents, they're from a, different country. They don't understand what's going on. They don't understand why their kid is, failing and, having these like, very isolated, oh, they won't come out of their room. They won't, do this. They won't listen. And then really having to sit down and, saying like, this is what's happening. Like these are symptoms of something. This is kind of like what's average or normal for your child's development, and this is where your child's at. So we really need to pay attention to it. It's a ton of like psychoeducation, and kind of just giving a word to it, because I feel like people understand, they like to have a diagnosis for whatever reason. They like to understand like what's wrong with me, like what's the diagnosis, and like I don't like to hyperfixate on that. But I do think it is important for psychoeducation.
Absolutely. And you also mentioned that you work with women's mental health and you're writing a self-help book for women. What do you think is different about working with women versus men as clients?
Yeah, I've had like really great experiences working with both. I think with women, it's just, women's mental health has just been like a lot more hidden. I think like a lot of the women I work with, our mental health issues are more like buried, like the perfectionism is coming out in their relationships, or like maybe they don't notice some of like the OCD behaviors, or like hypervigilance or anxiety, or, all of that until they're like postpartum. So I do work a lot in that space as well. And so I would say like, and as well as just like, in couples therapy too, I, enjoy working with both of them. But I think they both have their unique, like kind of what they bring to the session. But I feel like with women, they're more likely to reach out for help, but they also don't, a lot of times, like they don't ask for help until someone else notices it about them, because they don't want to take that time for their own mental health. So when they show up in session, they're kind of like, well, this is how it always is, and this is, what else am I supposed to do? Like there's not as many options, I think, for women.
Yeah. How do you help your clients break through that kind of worldview that makes a lot of sense as a woman in this culture, that we can come to that point of, what more can I do? What else can I do? And especially for, high functioning clients with high functioning perfectionism, as your book is going to be about. I mean, there's such a focus on, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And how do I perform, right? How do I present? And how can that change what's going on in the symptomology that I'm experiencing? And it makes a lot of sense that that women would kind of come to that point of, what else can I do? I've tried everything. I've tried all these different things. So how do you help your clients get through that point?
I think the first step really is to bring awareness to like the behaviors. So with like perfectionism, it's like, are you projecting that onto like your partner, onto your kids, onto like other people in your life? How much are you stressing about like things that you cannot control, or behaviors of others that you can't control? How much are you letting kind of people just dictate your time? Do you have boundaries? What are boundaries? Going back to like boundaries 101. Again, that like psychoeducation piece. I think that's really the first step, is to bring awareness to how this like high functioning perfectionism is impacting your life.
Mm-hmm. So what, I know you're still in the process of writing your book, but what are some of like, what are people going to be able to expect once you do finish your book? Like, is it more like a how-to guide to work on perfectionism, or what should they be getting from that book?
Yeah, I think what I really want women to get out of the book is to realize that this does like life doesn't have to be like this, like that they can, enjoy, like kind of reap the benefits from how hard they work rather than everybody else reaping the benefits from it. And really focusing on like quality of life rather than just like a task list. And I think it's going to be really about like, how to work on it, also how to recognize it when you're doing it. That's really important. And steps that you can take to sort of not pass this along to other people in your life. Because like with the high functioning perfectionism, there's a lot of criticism of others. There's a lot of criticism of yourself mainly. It all goes back to yourself, right? So I'm really and I think it's relatable. Like I think it's so relatable. And I have dealt with it in my own ways too. I think a lot of people in this field also deal with it in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you said, you help them understand that life doesn't have to be this way, that they are doing the right things. And they should be able to enjoy that and benefit from those things. So paint us a picture. I mean, what might a situation look like, right? With that idea of kind of the before and after. What are we trying to aim for? What does a day look like when we're letting go of that perfectionism and we're living life and enjoying life as opposed to completing a task list? How does that look?
Mm-hmm. I think it's about letting certain things go. So, I think when you're, with like the high functioning perfectionism, it's like you're concerned about like what you look like or what your kids look like. Like, did your kid wear that certain outfit that you picked out? No, your kid is throwing a tantrum, doesn't want to wear that. What are you doing about it? Are you fighting it? Are you trying to control this behavior that you can't control? Or is it okay, for once, if your kid, wears something that that like might bother you. I mean, these are real, I'm pulling from like real experiences people are having too. I mean, that's something that could send someone to high functioning perfectionism like in a spiral. Something just like as that could be really triggering is kind of like what I'm trying to get at. And then, you're going to work and then you get a flat tire. Like, is that going to just send you into another spiral? Now you're so stressed, you're so anxious. Like that's already a very inconvenient thing, but does inconvenience need to equal anxiety all the time? But it does when you're working from a place of this like hyper vigilance. It does feel like the end of the world when you get a flat tire for someone like that. You're really putting your body in this like really high stress like mode kind of. And then but if you just let go of that, you get the tire fixed, move along your day. Maybe like text your friend, be like, guess what just happened to me? That was, that really sucked. I need to like move on, but I'm gonna move on with my day. Really having like more of like a rebound from these like inconveniences or like things that you can't control. I hope that answered your question, but I mean, I'm putting like just like daily things that happen that like, for someone that doesn't have that, they might be able to move on from it quicker. Whereas like someone with, high functioning perfectionism or anxiety, like they're going to come home and like that's going to ruin their whole day. And they're not able to like continue, the rest of their life without that. And it could even affect, I mean, it's to the point where it can affect your whole week. It's like, oh, all these like 10 bad things happened to me this week, and that's all I'm going to focus on because it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, there's a quote that it makes me think of, and I don't know the quote exactly numbers wise, but it says, if you had X amount of dollars, which is the number of minutes in a day, if you had this many dollars and somebody stole $5 from you, would you spend the rest of those dollars trying to get that $5 back? And so it translates into you've got this many minutes in every single day, and whatever 24 times 60 is, I don't know, but you've got this many minutes, and if somebody steals 5 minutes from you, or if your tire is flat and that steals 120 minutes from you, are we going to spend the rest of those minutes of the day trying to get back that $120 that we can't get back, because time is not a renewable resource, and money is. You can make more money. You can then put $120 back into your checking account at some point, but you can't put that 120 minutes back into your life. And so it makes me think of that quote, and that's so true, that letting go as that thing happens, that resilience. The kids not wearing clothes thing, I'll tell you, I let go of that, and that made a huge difference. So that's such a great example, because my daughter, she's like me. She will not wear jeans. I hate jeans. I don't wear any jeans. I don't have any. And jeans are something that you find at garage sales a lot because they're durable. And so I'd buy these next sizes up in jeans, and I'd be stocked up in jeans. Well, when my daughter turned 3, I realized she's never going to wear jeans, and she doesn't. And so we consigned every pair of jeans that we had in the house, even the stretchy ones that I thought, oh, these will be no. And now as I find clothes or pick clothes out or pull clothes out that I've previously bought, have her try them on. And if she doesn't love that, it's not worth the fight. And we consign those clothes. If she gets a gift, her grandma is great about this now. She'll bring home a bag of clothes that she got, at Kohl's or wherever for her. And she'll try them on. And then my daughter knows, like, if you don't like it, if you're not going to wear it, if I can't pull this out of the closet and get you dressed in 5 minutes, if you're going to be like, it's itchy, this is tight, this sequence hurts, it's gone. Right. And her grandma will take it right back to Kohl's, because it's not worth the time that we end up spending on it. So I love what you're talking about here. You're talking about a time energy budgeting, and the ways that we waste that precious time and energy that we don't have enough of anyway, how we waste it on these things if we don't let those things go and let those things flow through our day. And so that kids wearing clothes thing, that is a great example. And it's hard too, as a parent, teaching resilience, because resilience, and especially raising a daughter, resilience in women is so important to be able to, like you said, bounce back from a flat tire, right? Bounce back from those things. Resilience is so important. When you're raising a resilient child, it's very difficult to punish or reward that child in order to influence behavior, because they don't care. They're like, she'll be at school and it'll be like, you're going to lose recess. And she's like, that's okay, I'll have recess tomorrow, and she's so happy about it. And you're like, please just be upset by this so you'll sit in your chair,
Yeah.
But because of that resilience, it's so difficult, right? Because you don't want to break that resilience. And so building that up in children is difficult because of the structure of our society. The structure of our society says, don't be resilient, right? Be upset that you're going to lose recess, or be, afraid to get in trouble. And let that upset you enough to the point where you give in and do the thing you're supposed to do. And so as a parent, trying to walk that line of like, yeah, you need to sit in your chair at school. Like, you need to do those things. But at the same time, knowing that if I squash that now, then she's going to grow potentially. I don't have control over all of this, but if I squash that now, that can potentially lead her to growing up into an adult that doesn't have that resilience, that goes, oh, this thing went wrong. I did this, I made this mistake. Now I've got to have all of these consequences to myself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it goes into, you had mentioned cultural identity, and how childhood impacts adults. And so what are some other ways with your adult clients, that you're exploring kind of their childhood and how that's impacted their symptomology now?
culturally, I've seen a lot of families or a lot of people tell me about their childhoods, and they realize it was a lot more like high conflict than they thought. They would hear their parents argue a lot, or like about like money, or that sort of thing, or maybe they felt like they had to be an emotional support person for their mothers in particular. And you're really taking on this role so young, and you don't really realize it till you're older, till you have like kind of this need to take care of everybody before yourself. I think a lot of times we don't realize how much or sorry, like many behaviors our parents modeled for us or exhibited for us, and that we picked up on until we're in our lives, working in relationships, and we're like, oh, like where is this coming from? Like where's this like deep insecurity coming from? Is it because like my parents never told me explicitly like I love you, or like you're doing a great job? Like that's not very common in South Asian culture. You're not really going to really hear your parents say that. For most families. And there's not a lot of like physical touch, or there's not a ton of those like affirmations, like you did a good job. It was kind of just the expectation you're going to do well in school. And and there's nothing else about that. Like we're not going to celebrate every time you like make this like milestone or achievement, because that was expected. And you live with that during these like formative years of your life, and then you're an adult, and you don't really like, nothing is enough at that point. It's like you get a promotion, you're like, oh, okay. Like you get married, or so many things happen in your life, and you're doing a good job, and you don't even realize it, because you're just looking for the next thing. And you're unhappy. And that's really kind of just the whole trajectory. And then when clients come to me and they're like, I'm like, okay, well, tell me about your childhood. I was like, we gotta go all the way back. And it's interesting, because with other cultures, I don't do that as much, but but oftentimes, like with my South Asian clients, we're really talking a lot about childhood for those first couple sessions.
Interesting. And I heard you mention too that you had your own like issues with perfectionism as well. And I'm assuming that's kind of like what you're talking about, how you were growing up to. Is that what led to your personal counseling experience then also?
Yes, I would say my parents did assimilate more. Like we would celebrate milestones and that sort of thing. I think for me, it was um, my family was pretty high achieving, and like expected a lot from us. And for me, it was like I got a master's, and I was like, I can't just have one master's. I could just get two masters in 3 years. So then I did that. And then it's like I moved from like Chicago to Texas, and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, well, I can't just do this. I need to get my clinical license. I need to open my private practice. That's not enough. I need to do this. It's always like the next thing. And to the point where my friends are like, you're just focused on like one thing. And I'm like, no, I'm thinking about something else already. Like I'm always thinking like 10 steps ahead. And also it was a lot about like what you can and can't control. I think control is like at the center of a lot of this too. Just feeling like I wasn't in control of things in my life, and like if that would cause like an anxious reaction. Like I just got tired of that, of being like, okay, what can I actually, and I have to tell myself like, what can I control in this situation now, and act accordingly.
Control is so hard because we are taught in our society, right? In school, they say you're responsible for your behaviors, and we're responsible for our behaviors. But a lot of times that gets so mixed up in terms of feeling responsible for outcomes versus feeling responsible for our own behaviors. And sometimes when we are responsible for outcomes, then we feel like, well, my behaviors don't matter because I can't control the other piece of this. And so, for example, I know you do couples counseling. Sometimes it feels like, well, if I can't control my partner's input on this, then my part doesn't matter. And then we get into giving up our own control of our own side of it and the part of it that we can do. Um, and and vice versa. on the flip side of it, feeling like, okay, well, I'm in control of my behaviors, my input on this. We see this in decluttering all the time, where, it's like, okay, well, I live in a house with two other people, right? So I can control getting rid of my stuff that I don't want, right? But how much influence do I have or control over the rest of my family? And so then some people take that and go, well, I need my house to be this way, so I'm going to go get rid of their stuff. And then some people go, okay, well, I'm going to get rid of my stuff, but then I still feel responsible. And especially as a female in the household, I still feel responsible for how the house looks, for the outcome of that. And so separating those pieces out can be so difficult. And letting go of that control a lot of times comes down to what will happen if I don't control the uncontrollable. What will happen and what could happen. And then if I go down the road, and sometimes people say, don't spiral into that, but I love a good spiral, right? Because I love doom spiraling,
Yeah.
because at each level, and as a fellow perfectionist, I'm sure you understand, at each level, you build a scaffolding. At each level, you build a bridge. And you go, okay, yeah, if I get down to this point, here's what I'm going to stand on. If it gets down to this point, here's what I'm going to stand on. And so going through that in our minds, especially as problem solvers, we're able to build up do the problem solving in advance, to then be able to say, okay, if my partner doesn't do what I want them to do, I can control what I will do. And so this is what I will do in that situation. This is what I will do in that situation. It reminds me of the quote that, the bird doesn't rely on the branch. The bird is not worried if the branch will be there, right? Because the bird is confident in its own wings, to keep it off the ground. And I think the same is true here with what you're saying about being able to identify what we're in control of. I love we do this with clients, like put your finger on your nose, everything behind your finger you have control of, and everything on the other side is totally out of our control. We just have no impact on it. So I think it's difficult for those clients. So when you've got clients who are coming in, they are high achievers. Things are going well. Does that make it more difficult to work with them? Because the patterns and the thought processes and the behaviors have served them well in so many different ways.
Yes, I'm so glad you asked me that, because it is so difficult, because they want to, analyze and overanalyze like everything I'm saying. And their number one goal is, I need to get something out of this session. Like I need like, tangible things, or like, I need to know what to do after, as soon as I, log off. And I'm like, whoa, we're not even there yet. This is the thing. It's like, you need to, slow down. You need to be patient with yourself. You need to, not everything needs this like output, um immediate output, this immediate gratification. I'm like, this is exactly what it is. And I have to sometimes say that and kind of set that boundary and expectations with them that, this is not going to get fixed, in like, 1 to 2 sessions. Like we need to kind of unravel, like, at what points in your life do you feel happy when you are so high achieving? And I love to bring them back to their life. And I'm like, look at all the things, you say, I have all these things in my life. Why am I upset, or why do I feel unhappy? And I'm like, exactly. Why are you not benefiting from your life? And a lot of times, like, that kind of puts them in this position where they actually have to like think and reflect on like the points in their life that they're feeling unhappy. Like, is it your relationship? Is it, that you don't have a lot of time to yourself? Is it the control aspect? Like, what is it? Are you not even doing something that you love? Are you just doing it because you were told to do it by, your parents or, whoever? It it makes them, it's a really uncomfortable spot to be in. But I will say, they're coming to me because they are finally so uncomfortable. So, that does, give me a little bit of window to kind of, show them like, okay, these are the points in your life that, we need to focus on. And it's, to your point, like, high functioning, some of them are project managers, but, they want to project manage every person in their life. And I'm just like, are you not exhausted? I mean, when I develop a rapport with them, I'm able to say stuff like that. And I'm just like, you don't, like, why do you have to, you're a project manager 9 to 5. Why do you need to be a project manager when you get off as well? Like, get off work. And they kind of have to think about that. And I'm like, no, you have to have some balance there. Yeah. But no, it is it's a rewarding population to work with, but it can be difficult sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I saw you mention that you work with eating disorders as well. Does that go along with a lot of those people who are perfectionism and want to be in control? Is that something that or is it a different clients that you work with as well, those eating disorders?
With eating disorder treatment, it's a little bit more diverse as far as like the clientele I work with. They're from all sorts of socioeconomic backgrounds. However, yes, it is a way that some of this high functioning perfectionism and anxiety manifests. And it's something that I've seen over and over again. And, eating disorders is kind of a broad term. You're dealing with the ones you heard of, like anorexia, bulimia, but also like over exercising. That's something that could be considered, or just having like varied eating habits, kind of being like, oh, I'm not going to eat breakfast because everybody else in the household needs to eat breakfast first. And then slowly it turns into you're not eating all day until you have a meal, and then that starts to feel satisfying for you. Like, how is this, like, what is exactly happening at that point? And with my eating disorder treatment, I work in a more collaborative team with a more collaborative team as well. So we have a dietitian, a doctor, a psychiatrist. It's more of like a team support for clients.
Awesome. Well, if you could give a suggestion to somebody who's on the fence about starting counseling, either in the eating disorder work that you do or your South Asian therapy that you work with as well, what suggestion might you give them?
I would say, I like to say like everything is a mirror. Like, that's something I like to tell my clients. And by that, I mean, like, kind of look at your life and look at the way it's reflecting back at you. Like, how are your relationships? How's your job? How do you feel about yourself, most importantly? And if you feel like those things are starting to make you feel unhappy, then I think it would be worth your time to find a counselor.
Absolutely. Just kind of taking inventory of our life and what is it reflecting about what's going on internally on the outside.
Absolutely.
Great suggestion. And I would imagine, especially for high functioning perfectionism, that it's so key to have those pieces of where is it not working, because so much of it is working if the goal is achievement. So wonderful. Well, we want to thank you so much for being here, Ayushi. This has been really, really great, informative information. If you are looking to get scheduled for counseling with Ayushi, go ahead and visit www.loveyourbehavior.com, or you can find her at always Ayushi on social media. And I like the Love Your Behavior website, because we think about behavior. Maybe it's just because we do behavioral intervention for children, but a lot of times when we hear that behavioral issues, we think about children. And as adults, we have so many behavioral challenges that come across in so many different ways. It's just not always, banging our fists on the floor and screaming, but it's other behaviors that we have, or non-behaviors, right? Absences of behaviors that we have. So I just love that. Loveyourbehavior.com.
Thank you. And I'm Ayushi Acharya, and I need a counselor.
Awesome.
Okay, and I'm Krista Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. Now, we want to hear from you. Text us or give us a call at 515-650-3231. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236. And if you're a provider seeking play therapy CEUs, you can find us on patreon.com/youneedatraining. We'll see you for the next episode, Sunday at 5.